Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. I'm going to be a star. How many times have budding actors and actresses, do they still use the word actress, by the way? I don't even know that. How many times do budding actors, we'll classify them as one thing. How many times do they use that? How many times do people, run to Hollywood and seek their fame and fortune, or perhaps New York if they're going to be a musician or whatever? And I'm going to be a star. I'm going to make it. There's a million budding actors in Hollywood, I would suppose, in California, just, working odd jobs, trying to make ends meet. And how many of them are actually truly going to become stars? I would suggest the percentage is probably very, very small, perhaps not even measurable. Who knows? So back in the day, when a young powerlifter, bodybuilder named Arnold Schwarzenegger said, "I'm going to be a star," you expected an impression, didn't you? I'll let you down. Trust me, there'll probably be some in this episode. When he said, "I'm going to be a star, I'm gonna try my hand at this," he was told, "You're crazy." Number one. Number two, no one who looks like you is going to make it in this field. Number three, um, the way you talk, that's going to stop you. That's going to handicap you. That's going to prevent you from getting it done. Well, don't tell Arnold back in the day that how dare he have the American dream? How dare he go for something? This dude had no money. I don't know if we can we drive that point home today, kids? This guy was broke, as a lot of people who end up, on top of the world in Hollywood, they start out, they really have maybe not a lot to their name. And they're just, grinding, and they're trying to get their foot in the door, and they're trying to, they're going for auditions, and they're living the life, and they're doing everything they can. Did Arnold have a leg up on certain people because of his body? Sure. But again, he was told, as you can imagine, you will never make it. And then the first Terminator happened. Everything changed. So let's talk about it, kids. The Terminator is an American science fiction horror film directed by James Cameron, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator, a cyborg assassin sent back in time from 2029 to 1984 to kill Sarah Connor. We will get into it here today. The film is, of course, directed by James Cameron, written by James Cameron, with Gail Ann Hurd, produced by Gail Ann Hurd, with cinematography by Adam Greenberg, music by Brad Fiedel. It was distributed by Orion Pictures with a release date of October 26, 1984. Total running time of 107 minutes. Released in the United States with a budget of, it's pretty meager, kids, $6.4 million, earning a box office total of $78.3 million. That's insane. It made some money. It's an iconic pick, and that is your lowdown for the first Terminator film. So Phil, we're doing Arnold here today. We've done Arnold before here on the show. I don't know how many pictures we are in of this guy, but can we take a moment to appreciate that this guy, again, came from nothing to become one of the most well-known action stars in the history of the planet, for goodness sake. And it all really started with this film. How long had it been since you've seen the first Terminator, and does it hold up for you to this day?
I haven't seen the first Terminator in had to be over 20 years at this point.
Wow.
It's Terminator 2, I see it quite often. But I for whatever reason, most people that know of the Terminator franchise, it could be because of the time distance between both movies. Like, I feel like you could be one of those people that saw Terminator 2 and didn't even see the first Terminator until like way after the fact. Um, this is like a 7-year difference, right? Because Terminator 2 was made in 91.
Terminator 2 is 91, yes.
Okay. So yeah, I feel like there's such a big gap there that some people may or may not have seen the first movie going into the second movie. Um, and I have seen it, but it's just like not one of those that I see all the time. I do think it holds up really well. They're just stylistically very different movies.
Oh, big time. Big time. I mean, the 7-year gap, dude, for computer technology between 84 and 91 is effing insane.
Yeah. Uh, but I mean, even I mean, you alluded to it when you said the genre of the movie. This movie is straight up a sci-fi horror movie. I feel like Terminator 2 is more of a sci-fi blockbuster film. Like it's in the middle of like, you know, the change of the guard and action movies being the thing in the 90s. Terminator 2 is very much an action movie. Um, this movie has action in it, but it's not really an action movie. It's kind of like a horror movie. Like really, the Terminator in this movie behaves like a slasher villain.
Oh my God, he did. And dude, Jason Voorhees. Jason Voorhees with a sick trench coat.
Yeah,
We talked about this on another pod, but like in '84, I'll dox myself. I don't care. I'm lucky to still be here. I think we all are. If you listen to this, you made it. Congratulations. Uh, I was 11 when this movie came out. I was horrified. Like this guy legit scared the life out of me. And like the whole he's metal underneath, dude, that as an 11-year-old, dude, I completely bought into that. Like
I don't think I
completely
was
bought
born.
into it.
I don't think I was born when the original Terminator came out.
Oh, I hate you so much.
84. Yeah, no, I wasn't born.
Oh, Phil, God almighty. Yeah, it was horrifying to me as a kid. I dude, terrifying. How old were you when you first saw it then?
Uh,
Were you an adult?
no, I was still a kid. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to remember what age. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't remember. But I definitely was a kid. I definitely saw it as a kid, and I think going from Terminator 2 to Terminator 1 is such a drastic jump, both visually and, like I said, thematically. So I don't know if I enjoyed it as much as Terminator 2 as a kid because Terminator 2 was just so cool to
Mm.
me. Um, but yeah, it's still a good movie. I think that it's not as innovative when it comes to like the visual effects and everything. I do think it's innovative when it comes to like sci-fi storytelling and some of the things that it tried to do early on.
Yeah, and there's a lot to dig into here with this film, man. A lot of stuff to get into. But when you stop for a moment and realize that the studio, I think it was the studio, wanted Arnold to be Kyle Reese and not the Terminator, and they sent him the script. They said, "Well, we've got the script. What do you think?" He's like, "Well, I've got some time. During, I guess it was the summer of that year, whatever. I've got a block of time. Yes, I've got time. Send me the script." He reads the script, gets back to them and says, "I'm not Kyle Reese. I'm the Terminator. Like I identify a lot more with the other character than I do with Reese. Like,
Yeah.
imagine Phil, a world in which he is Kyle Reese."
And I will say that because we watch these movies back to back, um, you could definitely see the improvement in Arnold's acting ability
Mm.
in between that 7 year gap. Um, because I do feel like he really drives home the emotionless, like cold, robotic mannerisms in the second movie more. Um, I feel like it comes across well in this movie because he doesn't have that many lines, but I feel like he's better in the role in the second movie, if that makes sense.
No, I agree, 100%. Yeah, this is him just still figuring out how to do this, really. So yeah, dude, like not only Arnold as Kyle Reese, but Lance Henriksen as the Terminator. Lance Henriksen, who portrayed Vukovich, one of the cops in the movie, one of the detectives. was the man initially that was going to be Terminator, and to the point that he had like had the trench coat, had the dark clothes, had been taking videos of him like, running and climbing a terrace, and he had actually put like the stories like he had put tinfoil across his teeth and had yeah, and had like he really wanted the role. Like, he thought he was going to get it, and I'm like, not for nothing. Lance Henriksen is a good actor. Like, he was in demand at one point. He's very, very good. In another world, he could have pulled it off. I think it would have been great. But again, that's not the movie that got made. It's the one that we all know and love. I mean,
Yeah. I don't know if it would have been it would have had the same feel to it if Lance played him. And
no.
that's no knock at Lance. I just think Arnold is so visually striking in the role that I don't think it would have had the same effect.
And I mean, he's naked like in the first 5 minutes of the film, completely, completely naked.
um and we don't have any gratuitous muscle for most of this movie. He's
No.
he's pretty much covered up head to toe from then on for the rest of the movie.
And that's one of the things that appealed to him about this role was that it wasn't about muscles. It wasn't about let's get his shirt off. He liked that it was a change of pace because when people get look at him, oh, okay, you want this part? Cool, take his clothes off.
Yeah.
So yeah, it worked out. I'd say it worked out, kids, for everybody. So let's go down the cast here, as we always do. Some guy named Arnold plays the Terminator, a cyborg. Again, terrifying as a kid. I would dare say, even in this day and age, when kids see this movie for the first time, forget the special effect part. I don't know if that even matters. The guy's still very menacing. He's very much still has a huge presence on screen. He still does to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah, big time. Michael Bean, who maybe does not get enough credit as Kyle Reese. And a funny story behind him is that he had been auditioning for like 3 straight weeks, maybe a month or better, for an adaptation of Fiddler on the Roof. And in the play, his character was Southern. So he goes to this audition immediately before the Kyle Reese audition. And the audition takes like 2 to 3 hours. Well, he ends up not getting the part, but he goes straight to the audition. And because he's been rehearsing with this Southern twang, they screen test him or audition him, and they send him back and tell his agent, well, he's not right for the part. And the agent says, well, why is that? Well, we're not looking for someone with a Southern, it's the accent. And he's like, no, 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 let us come back. So they let him come back, and then he comes in with his actual voice, said, apologies, that's not how I actually sound. So he ends up getting the part. That is to say, they didn't want him sounding like me. Okay, let's just call it for what it is. That's fine. What do you think about Michael Bean here as Kyle Reese, man? What's your take on his performance in this movie?
I think it's great. I of course I think that he kind of like you said gets a little bit diminished here because Arnold is really the star of this movie. Um, but I think he's great. I think that he does a good job as kind of like the main protagonist. Because uh, Sarah is the main protagonist, but Sarah hasn't really evolved into the character that we know today. She's kind of along for the ride for most of this movie.
Plus, she's, some dude shows up with a gun and tells you that you're the future mother of the guy that's going to save the planet or whatever. And you're like, excuse me. So she has to be terrified through a lot of this movie as well. At least her performance, she's on the run thinking she's going to be killed.
Yeah.
Um, he kind of has to nail this because, all right, all right, all right, all right. So we look back on films and we say, oh, it's dated, it doesn't age well, or whatever. But in 1984, that's not an issue because it's 1984 and everything is what it is, right? So, like, to them, nothing's going to look hokey unless it just looks ridiculous. So, if that makes sense. Uh, so, but even then, he has to nail this. Like, they were already their budget was horrible. The studio wasn't they weren't too keen on this to begin with. Science fiction wasn't a big draw at the box office to begin with in 84. So they were sort of maybe in an uncharted territory. So if Michael Bean doesn't pull this out, if he's plastic, if he's phony, whatever, this movie doesn't work. I mean, he was intense. Did he smile one time in this film? I don't know that he did. Like
No.
he had to nail this. He really feels like a man on a mission. To me, it doesn't feel like he's phoning it in that much at all.
Yeah, I do think that he took the subject matter seriously, and because of that, he added weight to the role.
Yeah.
Um, I think he was the needed he's a needed foil for Arnold in a lot of ways.
And they're only in one scene together. Actually, they're not. They don't share screen time at all in this film. If you notice that, um,
Yeah, the
even at the
only
very end when he goes to blow him up, at that point he's already a cyborg with the skin melted off, isn't he?
yeah, they're not using Arnold anymore. They're using the whatever they're using as a stand-in, and then putting in looks like the stop motion for the cyborg.
Yeah. Yeah, they built a life size model. It was 6'2", 200 pounds,
Yeah.
and they had to move it around. They even gave it a limp for the scene near the end.
Yeah,
Uh,
the stop motion in this movie, if you're used to CGI and like everything looking polished and seamless, this might be a little bit jarring for you, but again, it's the 80s, so everything about this movie screams 80s. By the way, the music in it
mhm.
just screams 80s.
It does big time, and it's um, I would submit that the herky jerky of the stop motion could be terrifying all by itself. Uh,
Yeah, it's
because
definitely unsettling.
yeah, right, yeah, that's the word. Yeah, because he shouldn't be moving like a human. He shouldn't have the gait of a human being to begin with if he's not trying to blend in anymore. And
Yeah.
plus, I found it interesting, Phil, when all the skins melted off, you can suddenly hear the servos and the gears like he's Iron Man. Suddenly you hear it, and I'm like, could you not hear that before when he was covered up with the with the skin and the blood? I suppose it mutes it at that point. I don't know.
I guess you could say that all like the blood and everything muffled it. I don't know.
Well, that works. We'll go with that. Uh, it's cool. I didn't bump into it. It's perfectly fine. Michael Biehn, we should say, was in is one of those guys that had a string of some really good hits there for a while. Let's see if I can remember or see. I know he was in Navy SEALs. I remember that. That was one of those young actor flicks because I believe Charlie Sheen was in that one.
Hmm.
Um, let's see. Yep, because this led to Terminator led to Aliens. Um, he was also in the Seventh Sign, which is a very again the word unsettling. He was in the Abyss in '89. He was in Navy SEALs in 1990. Um, let's see. Of course, he's in. Of course, Phil. We have to talk about Johnny Ringo in Tombstone. Like that may be the role he's remembered for. And you would think that he'll be remembered as Kyle Reese. And I don't know, dude. I mean, his take as Johnny Ringo is freaking fantastic. So good. But yeah, he's had a huge career, man. He started in '78.
Wow.
Yeah, his last project was in 2020. So yeah, pretty cool. Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, who's going to give birth one of these days to good old John Connor, who's going to save the whole world. Um, we gushed over Linda Hamilton before. We'll gush over her again. She's not yet quite yet the tough as nails, battle hardened chick that we see later. Right now, she's the damsel in distress. She's trying to stay alive essentially, but she's great in this, man. She's soft. She's very vulnerable. She's got those eyes, not to sound creepy, you know what I mean, but like she's got that look that it's like, yeah, like if you saw her getting picked on in a bar, you would go up and get the guy to back off. That she just has that look like she's a victim. I mean, dude, she did great in this movie, didn't she?
She did. It's such a departure from the rest of the franchise. She does a great job of just being like a regular woman, just being an unassuming woman from that era, and I guess kind of being a valley girl. Seems like.
Yeah, I think you're right. She got the hair right.
Yeah. It's just so different than what we see her doing in Terminator 2 and other times in the franchise that it's like it's just such a the evolution of her character throughout the entire franchise is probably one of the most interesting things about the Terminator franchise.
Yeah, her evolution is pretty startling when you see where she ends up later down the road versus who she was here. The Valley Girl reference is good because you've got let's see, Bess Mota, who portrays Ginger, who is Sarah's roommate. This man, she can't get the headphones off her ears, keeps them on all the time, which that comes into play later.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. So yeah. Again, I think she's perfectly cast here for sure. And this is, you know, you can't say that this is the Trinity moving forward because the movies don't work without Arnold and Linda. But in the beginning, this is the Trinity, and then it leads later to Arnold, Linda, and other people or whatever. But this is without these two, it doesn't work. So, and we'll finish out the cast here before we start talking about the plot. We've got, as we said before, Lance Henderson is Vukovic, member of the LAPD. His partner Paul Winfield, who's been in like everything through the years.
Yes.
Um, very good as Ed Traxler, who could have been that lieutenant who's like, tired of this. This ridiculous. That the cranky lieutenant that we see in every 70s and 80s action film and buddy cop movie. But like he was good cop here. The way he took care of Sarah when she got to the precinct, he went out of his way to make her feel safe. Like, dude, he was awesome here.
Yeah. I kind of hate it that he just kind of got shot and we never find out what happens to him. He just gets shot and they just move on.
They don't talk about it, do they? It's crazy.
um, yeah, we don't even get like a cameo from him later in the franchise that I know of. It's, cause yeah, it is interesting. But no, he is great in this. He's great as just like uh a good cop in a time where cops are being portrayed a certain way in movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I enjoyed him a lot. I was
Yeah.
just trying to remember. Isn't Michael Biehn in Mandalorian? I've been sitting here this whole time, like I've seen he's in an episode of Mandalorian, but I cannot
Is
remember which
he?
episode it is. I'm pretty sure he is. Um, like I'm picturing him in like the armor and everything. He's in an
Well,
episode of
he
Mandalorian.
is in The Mandalorian in chapter 13 called The Jedi. He portrays Lang.
That's right. He was a mercenary in that episode.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well done. He's done everything. Dude, go look up his filmography. He doesn't just have movie credits, he's got TV credits. God, this guy works forever. Like, oh my God, unreal. He even did voices in video games for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Very, very cool, man. Very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
well done.
And of course, don't want to downplay Paul Winfield as well. Paul Winfield has been
Oh, yeah.
everywhere. I mean, Star Trek, he's just been all over the place. Tons of movies, tons of TV shows. 227.
Of course,
I don't know why it just made me think of that, but yeah, 227. He's been everywhere. He's had cameos on all kinds of TV shows. Um, he's great.
he began in 67. His last role was in 2003. That's a good lengthy career. Won the Academy Award for Best Actor in the film Sounder. He also won a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actor in King and Roots: The Next Generations. NAACP Image Award, Primetime Emmy Award, Daytime Emmy Award. Yeah, yeah, this guy was an accomplished actor for sure. And we lost him in 2004. Dude, he worked all the way up to his death.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy. Um, and then there's the other guy who is Earl Bowen as Dr. Silberman, the criminal psychologist. And if you pay attention, kids, he shows up 7 years later, having not aged a day, reprising his role as the good doctor. And I love that part two was set up here and they had no intention of making a sequel because they didn't know if this movie was even going to make it off the ground. But when Silverman goes to leave the precinct and he looks down at the last second as Arnold's coming in, So he completely misses Arnold and then leaves. And you would have imagined he gets out of the parking lot with enough time that he doesn't know what happens after that. It's perfect.
Yeah, I did think that that was funny that he didn't believe any of Kyle's story, and in the second movie he doesn't believe any of Sarah's story as well. But he walked right past the Terminator and didn't even notice.
He did.
Wh- Um, yeah, it's funny when you think about it. But yeah, it is really cool to see him reprise the role later in the franchise. And he kind of plays this. I don't want to say dim-witted. He plays this oblivious role in this movie of like, see, look at this guy. I'm gonna make a lot of money off this guy. Look, listen to this guy.
Oh, that's good stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it would make sense that he doesn't believe even in part two because he never saw anything. Um, did you realize that was Bill Paxton as one of the punks? Did we talk about that?
Um, I I didn't realize it for a long time until I saw it once, and I was like, "That's Bill Paxton." Like, what you talking about the guy with the blue hair?
Yes.
Yes, that yeah,
Ah! Oh, and later on, Arnold assaults him as well in True Lies. Let's just make it clear.
yeah,
He's there with he's there with another guy who I guarantee you won't know his name, but you'll know his face when you see it. Brian Thompson. If you look up Brian Thompson actor, you'll see his face and go, "Oh my God, I've seen him in everything." Because he's got the best face for a villain of all time. He just looks like a bad dude.
yeah. Yeah, Bill Paxton and the other guy. They're the two guys that meet Arnold at the beginning of the movie. Uh, and he takes their clothes.
Yep.
Um, but I feel like Bill Paxton in this movie is so funny. Just his look. We've seen like similar characters in so many sci-fi movies and so many like dystopian future movies. I mean, even when I think of like Batman Beyond, and you think of the punk character that like
Hmm.
tries to mug somebody, it's the same kind of archetype.
You're right. 100%. So yeah, that kids is essentially your cast. It's worth noting that the bar that she goes to find refuge in is called Tech Noir, which is what they referred to as the look of the film. That it was tech, but it had to look like old tech. It had to look like beat up tech and worn down, and so it's very film noir style combined with tech, which is what they
Yeah,
called the bar, which is very cool actually. Great term for this movie too. If you look at it, it actually makes perfect sense.
it does. And that's why I say you can't you can't say that this movie was innovative in terms of like the visuals and like the big action set pieces, but uh you could absolutely say that this movie was innovative when it came to just like creating a new genre or progressing a genre would probably be a better way to say it. Uh because you could see all of the influences on cyberpunk from this movie. Like just cyberpunk as a genre, you could see so many influences on it from this movie.
Hmm. Oh my god, 100%, dude. Yeah, down to the coats, down to the wardrobe for sure.
Yeah, the looks, I mean, just so many things from this movie you could see in so many other uh franchises or so many other properties. It's crazy.
Well, as the story goes, kids, and if anybody's familiar with Cameron's work, you know that he directed Piranha 2: The Spawning in '82. Which, yeah, you see that movie, and you go, "Oh, this guy's meant for big stuff." Yeah, probably not. But the story is he was in Rome, Italy during the release of the film. He gets ill, falls ill, gets sick, has a dream about a metallic torso holding kitchen knives dragging itself from an explosion. Inspired by director John Carpenter, who had made the slasher film Halloween on a low budget, Cameron used the dream as a launching pad to write a slasher style film. Cameron's agent disliked the early concept of the horror film and requested that he work on something else. After this, Cameron dismissed his agent. Good for you, James Cameron. I mean, dude, this It came to me in a dream, dude. I mean, I'm not suggesting this is on the same level, but dude, Paul McCartney wakes up one morning with a song and he doesn't know what it is, and it's making him crazy because he knows he's heard it somewhere. So he goes and plays it for friends, and they're like, "I don't know that song, but it's beautiful." He's like, "Oh, come on, it's got to be a song." So he goes and plays it for each Beatle at a time. He's like, "What is this song? It's stuck in my head. I can't get it out." They all three say, "I don't know what it is, but I love it." That song was Yesterday. Dude woke up with it in his head, just out of the blue. Again, maybe not the same story here, but that's what it reminds me of. Were it not for this nightmare, Phil, we don't get the Terminator series.
Yeah, I mean there are tons of things that creatives once they have something stuck in their head, they have to get it down on paper. We've
Yep.
heard that so many times about the creative process. I mean, from my understanding, that is the creation of Spider-Man. That Stan Lee saw a fly crawling on a wall, and he was like, "It'd be cool if a superhero could crawl on walls," and that's how
Yes.
we got Spider-Man.
Yeah, because I think he was tasked with, we got to come up with something. We got to do X, Y, and Z, and yeah, you just look around the room and take it. My God, who does that? Stanley, genius people do that, kids. Look around the room, take inspiration. It's crazy. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. Bill Wisher, who was also on board helping write the second film, as well as having worked on this one. They both had a similar approach to storytelling, which is why they worked well together. So the initial outline, this is fun, involved two Terminators being sent to the past. Sound familiar? The
Yeah.
first was similar to the Terminator in the film, while the second was made of liquid metal and cannot be destroyed with conventional weaponry. Oh man, that feels familiar, Phil. Cameron felt that the tech of the time wasn't able to create the liquid Terminator. If only, Phil, we could have seen that movie.
Yeah, I'm glad he waited 7 years because I think the T-1084 would have looked horrible.
Hmm. Can you imagine how would they have even done it?
Yeah, I can't imagine that would look good.
Stop motion the life out of it. It would have been like claymation, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that wouldn't have looked good. Yeah.
It's claymation. It's like the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer Christmas special. It's all stop motion claymation. Puppetry. Yeah. Hey, look, Yoda was a puppet. What am I complaining about? And that worked? I don't know. So yeah, what a great story, man. And I love the one line that goes by really, really fast, but it automatically piqued my radar because I haven't seen this movie in a very long time. When Kyle's talking to Sarah in the car and he tells her about the T600 that had rubber skin, and that was easy. They could spot those guys from a distance. Dude, I suddenly want to see a T600.
Huh.
Yeah, that sounds interesting to me. Like something's not quite right about that guy.
Yeah, I did think one of the cooler things they do in this movie is we do see a Terminator in action with like the human skin on in the one scene in this movie because if you only see Terminator 2, you're just like, all right, well, they sent the Terminator back in disguise to the future, but you don't understand, you don't have the context that the Terminator actually used the disguise in the future as well to infiltrate uh, rebel spaces and kill people. Because I mean that scene where he comes in there and all of those where all of those humans are just underground trying to survive, and he just comes in there and starts killing people is terrifying.
Yeah, really. Yeah, no kidding. Um, and I tell you something else I bumped into at first and then I immediately backed down because I realized how great it was that the terminology is so very simple. It's Terminators, it's hunter killers, and then you find out Cyberdyne systems. That's it. There might have been a couple, 2, 3 words thrown in that I'm not recalling, but I love that there wasn't like this big elaborate set of names and words and code numbers, and there's a few, but I don't know. I think you'd maybe expect a glossary of terms here, but like the whole backstory of this thing is that once it goes live and the AI becomes self aware, then just like the Matrix, Phil, like the first instinct is, well, we're going to take over. We know better than these creatures do. These humans, so called. Let's just take everything over. So they do, and like it happens so fast that like there's no real time to come up with some kind of cute program. It's just the humans are left call these things hunter killers, which makes sense.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool. I bumped into that at first, and then I immediately backed down. It made sense. Um, Back to the Hendrickson story, a little bit more to talk about here. Let's see. There was supposed to be a meeting. Lance was going to show up. And so he shows up early, dressing and acting like the Terminator. He's wearing a leather jacket, fake cuts on his face, and gold foil on his teeth. He kicks open the door to the office and then sits in a chair and just doesn't move. Cameron arrives shortly after and relieved the staff from Hendrick's act, so he let him in on it. So that's really what got the ball rolling on the studio paying attention to this, because it was like, okay, we'll hear the pitch. Let's listen to this silly science fiction thing. Then they got it up close and personal and said, well, this is what it could be. This is what I'm thinking. Like it was originally budgeted for 4 million. And then they realized, oh God, that's not enough money. So they raised it to 6.5. Still, again, not enough money. Dude, if they'd had 10 million, who knows what they could have done with this film?
Hmm.
Crazy. All right. So it's the plot question, Phil. You've been waiting for it, I know. So I'm going to hit you with it. Much in the same vein as T2, when the goal is to come back and save the kid, in this movie, they're coming back to, either kill and or save the mom. Uh, what about the technology or not technology? What about the plot here, which she actually mentions in the closing narrative of this film, where she's, basically saying that, I wonder if he remembers, he sends you back or whatever. Will you remember that you're going to send him back? I don't know. It's all very, in T2, it seemed like we had a tough time with it, but this movie kind of made it a lot simpler to understand. What do you think about the plot of this film?
Yeah, T2, I was confused because again, I hadn't seen Terminator in a long time.
Hmm.
Because I was like, wait a minute, he's John Connor's father. Um, how would he not know that? Like, how would he not know that he was sending his father to the past? Um, but I feel like in this movie, you get more of an idea that he does because
Yep.
he gave him the picture, and then when we find out why when the picture was taken when she's recording herself talking about, how loving they were just for the few hours were together. Um, and the expression on her face, even when he gives the line later, he's like, "Yeah, I've always wondered, like, what are you talking about, or what are you thinking about when this picture was taken?" Talking about you.
Exactly.
So so it just the coincidence of saying that, he fell in love with her from that picture, and knowing what we know later in the movie. It's good storytelling.
It is. Yeah, this one seems to fit. I think where it goes south for me is when we try to wrap our heads around the idea that there could possibly have been anything after T2. I mean, there wasn't. We both agree nothing happened after T2 because that ended the franchise, as it should have. That's when it starts to get weird for me, because it doesn't make any sense there'd be anything after T2. Because in this film, all right, all right, all right. So in this film, the idea wasn't, let's stop Cyberdyne. We got to stop Skynet. I don't even know if they mentioned Skynet at all here, but like, we got to stop that. No. The goal was we got to save her so she can give birth to him, who in turn will save the future in the future,
Right.
which makes sense because Kyle tells her that what was it he says that her son had found a way to shut down the Terminator's main defenses, which means they could get in and destroy them finally.
Right.
So there you go.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense for there to be a sequel to Terminator than it does to be a sequel to Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Um, and I just think the evolution of all the characters from Sarah Connor to Arnold as the Terminator, um, when we finally meet John and we get an idea of everything she did to prepare him between 7 years. Um, yeah, it just works so much better. Um, and we just get an idea, not just how traumatic of a situation it was for the Terminator to come and try and kill Sarah, but just how big of an impact that Kyle had on her.
Yeah, because she's like, yeah, she never really recovers from his death, I don't think.
No.
And boy, they didn't give him exactly this grand send off, man. When she rushes up to him and turns him over, he's flat out dead. Like it's kind of
Yeah.
horrifying the way he looks. Like his eyes aren't even closed for goodness sake. Like they didn't really give him a. I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess I expected more of a he dies in her arms kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, this is very much a horror movie.
Well,
uh,
that's fair.
he when he gets turned over, yeah, we don't get any like last words or like uh nothing. It's just basically like, this is it. That's it. He's gone.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, for sure.
Which I mean, I feel like it's pretty much a very realistic take on what war is as well. Because it's like, yeah, once somebody's a casualty, they're gone.
Yeah, that's fair. Honestly, I mean, it's hard to fight that. You're right, man. This movie does very much have the feel of a slasher film, and with good reason. As we said, we gave the backstory. Um, so let me hit you with this. What do you? All right. How could this movie not have worked? Like a lot of it's the casting, obviously. A lot of it is everything just fell in place at the right time. What do you think if there had been too much or not enough, this movie would have tanked? In your opinion, what do you think would have done it in?
Um, I don't know, because I feel like it was such an original idea at that time. There was really nothing else at that time like Terminator, and I think that's a big reason why it worked, and I think that's a reason why it became such an iconic film for people, and why it was so influential.
Mhm.
I think the only thing that could have really made it fail is if James Cameron didn't stick to his guns on it. If he backed away and decided, all right, let's just make it a straightforward slasher movie. Let's not put any of the sci-fi stuff in it. Let's not, uh delve into tech noir or whatever you want to do, whatever you want to call it. Then I feel like maybe then it wouldn't have been successful.
Mhm.
But no, I feel like a big part of its success is because it was so fresh and so different.
Yeah, that's fair, honestly. I mean, at any given time, one wrong move, one wrong casting decision, one wrong, one scene that was really ridiculous and silly could tank a film or make it memorable for the wrong reasons. And I don't think we
Yeah.
had any of that here. This was genuinely terrifying in spots.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like it came around at the right time. When was Blade Runner made? Blade Runner was made around the same time, right? It was like 83, 82, or something like that.
I want to say you're right. Yeah.
Uh, so I feel like it kind of came around at the right time as well.
82.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to be careful with saying that it created a genre because there was other stuff similar to uh Terminator before that. There were sci-fi properties that weren't just straightforward sci-fi. Because Blade Runner is basically a noir movie. It's a sci-fi noir movie as well.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's why I wanted to be careful and say that I feel like Terminator progressed the genre. It did create a new one.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's see. So the beginning of this film, and we're not going to go incredibly deep here, kids. The machines rose from the ashes of the nuclear fire. Their war to exterminate mankind had raged for decades, but the final battle would not be fought in the future. It would be fought right here in our present tonight. There you go.
Yeah, it's not a Terminator movie if we don't see like a tank rolling over skulls.
Oh, what a scene. And all that's miniatures, of course. Most of the opening scene and the flash forwards are all miniatures.
Yeah, all
Um,
of that stuff is stop motion as well.
yeah, it is.
You can see right away. Um, if you've seen anything with stop motion or in it, or you've had any experience with it. And a lot of stuff still looks good.
Yeah.
If anything, it looks dated just because this was like 40 years ago, and just the technology has just advanced so much. Um, but it doesn't look terrible. I would actually say the stuff that doesn't look that good is the stuff where you can tell it's not Arnold's face and they have like the prosthetic to have
Mm,
the cybernetic eye in it. That
yeah.
that stuff looks worse than any of the stop motion does.
Yeah, because they had built an actual torso from the chest, there's like the sternum up of Arnold, um, to get those scenes in the mirror. You can tell it's actually probably his arms and hands, but it's actually from the chest up. Of course, is not him. So
Yeah, it looks very much plastic. It does not look real.
yeah.
uh,
But at the time, it's what we had, and Stan Winston, the man, was on this. Stan Winston, his 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 uh, his list of credits in Hollywood is a mile long, as it should be. The guy's a freaking genius, so good with what he does. Um, but yeah, it's what they had. There was a lot of what James Cameron called guerrilla filmmaking. Basically, a nice way of saying is we didn't have enough money, uh, because a lot of scenes were shot after principal photography was done, and because they couldn't acquire permits needed to film certain scenes. This means that the production crew and the actors would show up at a location, shoot the scene as quick as they could, and split before the cops showed up. As a result of that, some of the people seen in a few of the shots are actual everyday people, completely unaware they're in a movie. This was also used for reshoots, with Cameron even calling and waking Arnold once at 3 a.m. to meet him in location, already in full costume, to quickly reshoot a scene. He used this tactic to film the very last scene where Sarah drives off into the sunset. Uh, so the store with the very last scene, it's beautiful, right? The sky and everything, the desert. There had been, like, according to them, no cars on that road all day. And they were about to get the shot, and here comes the sheriff, pulls up and says, "You can't. You got this rig in the middle of the highway. You can't do this. You can't. Where's your permit?" So James Cameron, whose son is there at the time, and I guess as a college grad or college student, says, "Well, my kid here, he's, it's his film. It's a college film, and we're just trying to get one quick shot." So the cop immediately becomes very cooperative and says, "All right, all right, all right. Just get off the road, and so we can clear the highway and get your shot as soon as you can." So they did. He lets him get it, and that's the final shot of the entire movie.
that's funny.
Yeah.
It is interesting though. Um, I feel like there are aspects to this movie and movies like Blade Runner. Um, I don't know. They almost feel more warm, and they feel more like a comfort movie than something like Terminator 2 that is just like overproduced and just like, well, overproduced might be the wrong word, but that has like a high production value. Um, and I feel like we see that same thing as wrestling fans. Like some of the most I've enjoyed wrestling is when it's not overproduced. It's just intimate setting. It's just the wrestling, and it's straightforward.
Hmm.
It doesn't need all of the other bells and whistles around it. Long as you have a strong narrative, and long as you have a quality uh uh setup for a story, then you don't really need everything else. And I feel
Hmm.
like we've seen so many movies like that succeed. Like, I mean, Melvin Van Peebles, sorry, Mario Van Peebles. Sorry, wrong again. Melvin Van Peebles. Melvin Van Peebles directed uh the Sweetback movie in the same way, and kind of the guerrilla tactics and whatever it takes to make this movie. And it became one of the most iconic movies of that time period because everything else was black exploitation, and this was just so different than anything else. Um, yeah, I feel like it's kind of the same thing here.
It makes it feel more organic, more gritty. It makes it feel real.
Yeah. Um, Easy to get those things confused, by the way, because Melvin Van Peebles, rest in peace, directed Sweetback, and then Mario Van Peebles, his son, directed a movie that was about the making of Sweetback,
Mm.
which are both good. I mean, Sweetback is a better movie in my opinion because it's so much about the making of the movie and Melvin Van Peebles as a man. Um, can't say how much I appreciate Melvin Van Peebles as a creative.
Mhm. I just remember Mario directing. Was it New Jack City?
Yes, yes,
Dude, that movie's still being referenced all these years later.
yes. Um, classic movie. New Jack City just never gets old for me. I quote the scene from from the court all the time. Uh, when Nino is like, "No, this is bigger than Nino Brown," and he gets up and he's like, "Yeah, this is bigger than me, and I'm taking down everybody with me. See, it's him right there, Kareem Akbar." That's right. That smart brother from the bank. He's behind the whole thing. He's the real brains behind the CMB.
I may have seen that movie a lot when it came out. Like a lot, dude. When it hit like HBO, I watched the life out of that thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think about that movie quite often. I think about there's so many scenes I think about in that movie. Just him in that scene snitching on Kareem when Kareem did nothing but just help him launder his money. Um, and the guy that shoots Nino at the end of the movie, who was in Terminator 2. Um,
Oh
the
yeah.
Ice T in the movie, which is this is not some of Ice T's best acting, but his lines in the movie just classic line. I want to shoot you so bad, my dick hard.
God, I've forgotten a lot of that film, man. Jeez, I need to go back and watch that.
Yeah, I've seen New Jack City countless times, man. I just come on, man. Him pouring the champagne on the girl's back. Cancel it. Just classic movie, man.
Oh man. Yeah. Good stuff for sure. Like you said, it's a classic movie. Um, couple other things here that's worth mentioning is that Arnold practiced a lot with guns, as you guys can imagine. He used guns in this film. Well, if he looked
A lot of
comfortable with
guns.
them, a lot of guns. If he looked comfortable with them, he should, because he worked with guns every day for a month to prepare for the role. The first 2 weeks of filming, he practiced weapon stripping and reassembly while blindfolded um, until the motions were smooth and fluid like a machine. He spent hours at the shooting range and practicing with different types of weapons without blinking or looking at them when reloading or cocking. He also had to be ambidextrous. He practiced different moves up to 50 times. He wound up getting a compliment in Soldier of Fortune magazine for his realistic handling of the guns on camera, which, feeling about you, I don't take that as a compliment.
Yeah, that's a little
Creepy.
morbid.
Yeah, it is.
Uh,
Uh, yeah.
yes, he's like walking through a police station, murdering dozens of police officers, like
Yeah.
with precision, and you're complimenting him on that. That's yikes.
Well, sometimes gun people can be wacky, Phil. What can I say? By the way, if you're a gun person, you listen to the show. Thanks for subscribing and downloading. You're you're the best. Just don't be so gun wacky. That's all we ask.
Yeah, can't say
Um,
that I'm the biggest fan of guns.
no,
But I hey, praise to Arnold for doing his due diligence, and I did think he looked great in this movie.
he did.
There were several times where he had to walk down the hallway and look bad at guns, or like get this pose off where he had to shoot with both hands, and he looked great.
Hmm. He did. He's very very believable in this film as a crazed cybernetic killer. Honestly.
Yeah, there's just so many cool things that like I said, it's just visual stuff he does. He doesn't do the dialogue like the scenes when he's in a hotel and he's digging into his arm with that exacto knife, and yeah, it just looks very gross. But at the
Oh, I
same
know.
time, when he finishes it up and he comes out and he just has the one glowing eye and he puts the sunglasses over it, so cool.
It's great. And talk about his lines. He only had 14 of them here. He had 24 in Conan the Barbarian in 82.
Hey, I'm back. I'll be back.
Yep.
That is the big line from this movie, and of course, come with me if you want to live, which is
Of
repeated later.
course. That thing's been done in pop culture through the years so many times in so many different mediums. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Uh, and I mistakenly called this film Arnold's breakout role because I'm gonna be straight with you. I've seen the Conan movies. I'm not a fan, but I gotta be real. When I think of, all right, Tom, name the movie that made Arnold a star. I don't think of Conan the Barbarian. That's me. I always think of Terminator.
Yeah, I don't either. I can't think of the last time I've seen Conan.
I
Um,
haven't seen it in a long time.
but I would agree with you. I think that Terminator is really, to me, the if put it to you this way, if Conan introduced the world to Arnold Schwarzenegger, I feel like Terminator was when he really arrived.
Mhm. I agree with that. 100%. Couple of things to mention here that's very cool. In the beginning of the film, Terminator drives over a toy semi truck. Towards the end of the movie, the Terminator is run over by the same model of the semi truck.
Oh, I
Uh,
didn't notice that.
yeah, when he rolled over it, I thought, wait a minute, isn't there a truck later in this film? And sure enough, it's the same model that rolls over him, which is nice. Uh,
Callbacks.
so this is good. This is fun. One afternoon during a break in filming, Arnold goes to a restaurant downtown LA to get some lunch and realizes all too late he was still in Terminator makeup with a missing eye, exposed jawbone, and burned flesh. But it's LA. They've probably seen worse than that, Phil. I'm just saying. Uh, yeah. There's so many fun little tidbits of this film, man. As we know, I think we discussed it on the T2 episode, which kids, you won't know that because we'll release this one first. It's fun. We time travel for this episode, kids. We neglected to tell you we time traveled for this one.
Yeah, go figure.
Go figure. So one of the guys considered for Terminator because there was other, there's a few different names. One of them considered for the role. Say it with me, kids. O.J. Simpson
Wow.
as a slasher killer. Phil. Yeah.
Might not
Uh,
have gotten over well later on in life. Yikes.
Producers feared he was, quote, too nice, end quote, to be taken seriously as a cold blooded killer. Oh, yeah. Well, no jokes needed for that. The guy's a freaking disgrace. I'm sorry. And, it became too, just a side note, becomes too much of a punchline way too easily for people. And I had my fair share of laughs over the guy because he was he turned out to be what he turned out to be. I'm not going to lie. Not proud of it, but it's all over entertainment. It's all over TV and news and radio and everything at the time. Like, but let's be fair, man. Two innocent people, as innocent as two people can be, I suppose, were killed, like brutally freaking murdered. Like dude, that gets lost in the OJ thing, right? Because like all the jokes are about him and all this, the glove quit and fit and all that other nonsense. But like at the end of the day, two people are never coming back from that, dude. We kind of glaze over that, I think.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the 30 for 30, the Made in America series on OJ, is really really good. And I think it drives home some of the things about OJ as a person. Um, but it also really drives home how terrible what this man did was. This isn't just like you just killed two innocent people. You killed a mother. Like this is a you left kids without their mother. Yeah, it's horrible. When you watch it and you hear other things like yes, his the phone calls that she was having to the police before he did it and how abusive he was, it's awful.
Yeah, I mean, dude, people would argue that he I don't think he got anything that had coming to him. He spent some time. He's out, right? He spent time in prison, but he didn't get what was coming to him, dude.
Yeah, he's out. He's out and he's still doing just fine. He's acting like you know nothing has happened. He's just moved on with his life.
How about when he goes, "Hey, I didn't do it, but if I had, here's
When he
how I
put
would have
that
done it."
when he put that book out, yeah, that was
What?
crazy.
Like what? Oh my god!
Yeah, nah, OJ is pretty messed up guy. Again, cannot recommend that 30 for 30 on OJ enough. Um, very good. It follows all of his career from like college up. It's very very good. Um, yeah, some of that stuff is pretty hard to watch though. Once it gets to the
I'm sure.
stuff with the trial and some of the stuff between him and Nicole, it's really grim stuff.
Ooh, I don't know if I can handle it. Um, we do see Phil, by the way, another Terminator. No, it's not the juice. It's in the future, and he's pretty ripped, kind of like Arnold. Franco Columbu, who was a multiple Mr. Olympia title winner like Arnold and was a close friend, got the part of the Terminator of the future who comes into the shelter blowing people away.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Terrifying. He just comes in there. All these people are just like trying to huddle together for warmth, and he just comes in and just starts murdering
God.
people one by one. It's crazy.
Yeah. Arnold, at what point did you realize his eyebrows had been shaved off?
I think it's in a scene where he's driving up the street in the car, and I'm like, yeah, this looks kind of weird.
Same. That's the exact when he's turning from side to side looking. Yeah, yeah, dude. It's the exact
Yeah,
same scene I saw. Yeah.
yeah, it looks weird.
I guess because there was so much shadows. Here's something fun. He had his eyebrows insured at Lloyd's of London as he feared they might not grow back properly after he shaved them.
I did not know that.
Oh, that's fun. His iconic catchphrase almost became "I will be back" because he thought he sounded more like machine without a contraction. He also felt "I'll" sounded too feminine. It was the one major disagreement between Arnold and
What?
James Cameron, and all Cameron had to say was, "I don't tell you how to act, so don't tell me how to write." There you go.
It sounded too feminine. Can't imagine that's why you don't want to say I'll be back, but all right.
It's contractions, they sound too girly. Can't help myself. I don't need you and your girly contractions.
Who
My
is your
my
daddy? What does
yeah.
he do?
My version of Arnold is more SNL than Arnold, to be honest. So yeah. Girly contractions. It's the name of my first big hit is girly contractions. So my yeah, it's my Secret Service code name, girly contractions. Uh yeah, well, talk about people who maybe shouldn't have been in this film. Mel Gibson turned on the role of Terminator, simply feeling he wasn't right for the part. After seeing the film, he praised Arnold as a much better choice. We agree with you, Mel. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if Mel would have worked as well. No. He might have been good as a Kyle Reese when you think about it.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think he
actually.
actually would have been great as Kyle Reese.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. The Terminator is the only character to be listed in the American Film Institute's 100 Heroes and Villains as both a villain for this film and a hero for T2 Judgment Day. Al Pacino and Arnold are the only two actors to be on the list as playing a villain and a hero, but Pacino played two different characters. 13 other actors and actresses appear twice or more, but either all as heroes or all as villains. James Cameron, notoriously hard to work for. He's a workhorse. He worked the crap out of this crew. He always did. Very hard to work for because he knew every job on the set, probably better than the people who had the job. So it infuriated him when people weren't doing what he needed them to do because he felt like he could do it better. At the time, the crew had T-shirts made saying, "You can't scare me. I work for James Cameron."
Wow.
Oh, that's fun. Sci-fi author Harlan Ellison sued James Cameron, claiming that while he hugely enjoyed the film, he felt the story was plagiarized from the two Outer Limits episodes that he had written, namely the Outer Limits Soldier, released in '64, and Outer Limits Demon with a Glass Hand in '64. The concept of Skynet could also have been borrowed from an Ellison short story called "I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream." The suit was settled out of court, and newer prints of the film acknowledge Ellison, which I picked up on that in the very beginning of this film. It's one
Yeah.
of the first credits you see.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, but again, That's why I'm like, you gotta be careful with saying someone created something because it just there's so much material out here. It could be some lesser known thing. Not that Outer Limits is like some lesser known property, but it could be something that some people have never seen before that also had the same idea.
Yeah, because everybody's inspired by something. I mean, there
Yeah,
have been, dude. There's anti George Lucas people who are, by the way, are still alive. Like from before the original trilogy, who hold a grudge and say that all he did was rip off Flash Gordon. That's all he
yeah. I
did.
don't know. I don't know about all that.
Yeah,
I don't know about all that. I can see some similarities to Flash Gordon, but nah.
because he wanted the property. He wanted that first, and they couldn't make it happen. He couldn't make the deal happen because the rights were tied up, and he couldn't get his hands on it because he wanted to do a Flash Gordon movie.
Hmm,
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah. So, so we've discussed that there's no movies after T2. So, the fact that T2, and I'm jumping ahead, the fact that T2 ends so perfectly and wraps everything up, you could have not wrapped it up if you'd wanted to. If the idea is we're going to keep moving forward, they could have just kept moving forward. I'll just never understand why. I don't get it. I'll never, it sticks in my head so much how T2 is a great freaking movie. And it wraps up the story 100%. And they just kept it going after that. I just can't wrap my head around that, man.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know.
do you ever remake the Terminator? Like, do you ever start over? Do you ever say, like James Bond? You know what I'm saying? We got to keep this character in this universe alive. Do you ever remake this film? What do you think?
Well, it seems like they've done with the Dark Fate movie that they're attempting to do like a loose reboot. Um, I don't know if you can ever capture the magic of Terminator again by remaking it because, um, again, I feel like what made Terminator work at the time is that it was so fresh and it was so different than anything else. And we've just seen so many iterations of sci-fi stuff now. Like you'd have to, I don't know, I feel like you had to do something completely different um, to really wow people because we've seen it now.
Yeah, that's true. I'm thinking Batista. I
You
mean,
just
who
gonna
else
get
play?
Batista as Terminator?
Dude, who else? I mean, I don't know. I guess if Hemsworth can get jacked up to play Thor, anybody can get jacked up to play anybody. But I don't know, man.
You're not putting Cena in it?
That was a thing, wasn't it? Wasn't that a thing at one time that there was talk
Was it?
about?
I didn't know that.
I don't quote me. I don't. I'm not sure.
And I mean that's not a knock at Cena. I think Cena has improved leaps and bounds from where he was as an actor. But
Yeah,
I mean, you could say that James Gunn is a big part of that because I think he was really good in Peacemaker.
100%. Oh, dude, John's come such a long way. We've gushed about. Well, I gushed a little bit about John, I guess, in other episodes because he's just one of those guys, as we've said in other episodes, Phil. If you don't take yourself seriously, you stand a fairly good chance of at least having some kind of success in this business. Like
Yeah,
John doesn't care to be laughed at. He doesn't care to be the butt of the joke. He embraces it. He has fun with it. He's perfectly okay with it. Much in the same way that, well, Arnold, dude, listen, for much as Arnold has an ego, he has no problem being in a comedy. He has no problem being goofball. He's done it before. I mean, I think that's what has been John's saving grace through the years. Whereas, no disrespect to The Rock, most of Rock's roles are straight laced. He had that one in was it Get Shorty Part Two, I think.
yeah,
When it was a little, he was flamboyant, it was over the top, and you could tell he was really having fun. But those roles for him are very, very few and far between. Most time he's the jacked action star, and that's just not the route that John's taken.
yeah. Be cool. That's the
Be
movie name.
cool. That's it. That's it. Yeah. Um, yeah. Again, a lot of cool stuff here happening throughout this movie. This movie almost didn't get made. I love those stories about guerrilla filmmaking. They had to do things on a budget. They had to get shots at the very last second. The whole bit at the end with the metal press and when she's crawling through it and the machine's crawling after her, which haunted my dreams for years. That was not a haunted. That was not a metal press. That was foam core, spray painted chrome. Ruining it here for you, Phil. And the very last shot, which was like the shot that really ended the film and told you it's over, everything's going to be okay. The eye was not real, of course, and it's tinfoil, legit tinfoil. And the smoke, the puff of smoke that comes out after the eye, falls down, someone is behind and blows cigarette smoke through where the tinfoil is, and that's the final scene.
I did not know that.
It's great. But it looks so good. It looks legit. It looks like the metal press has completely crushed this thing, and now we're all safe. Movie magic. So good. Also, as a side note, when Kyle Reese is zipped up in the body bag, that's actually a garment bag, a suit bag that James Cameron had in his car. And they just made it work because they didn't have a body bag to use. So,
Wow.
fun stuff.
That's a pretty big garment bag. You can fit a whole person in it.
I know, right? I suppose so. Yeah. Well, kids, we could go on and on about this film, man. There's a lot of good stuff here, as we said. In my opinion, this movie holds up. Yes, some of the effects are wacky because of today's time and the stuff that we're used to seeing now. We talked about the possibility of, do you ever go back and do this again? I love the idea. This movie's been done in other avenues with not the same story, Phil, but close, borrowing themes from this movie, from this story. The idea that, the Terminator thing wasn't technically supposed to be like, weren't they like supposed to, they were sent to fight wars, and then like technology turned when it got out of control, the humans couldn't get control of it, which basically makes a lot of sense about our race here, Phil, that we're going to F this up one day.
Oh, of
We're,
course.
we're going to keep messing with technology.
Of course. So humans will be their own demise.
100%. 100%. Hopefully we're all gone by the time it happens, because I don't want to be killed by a Terminator. Although what a way to go out, man, fighting a Terminator. It's fun stuff. One other bit I got to mention. This is great stuff. When he's on top of the car and puts his fist through the windshield, that is an actual windshield. That's not breakaway glass. It's not candy glass. That's the
Wow.
That's a real windshield. They use a hydraulic arm, which they they made the fist like gloved. Arnold is up on the roof of the car. The rig that they built to drive this thing through the windshield was so heavy the car couldn't move. So they took tarp and painted it like a brick wall of the alley, put it on the side of a big truck, and kept the car still while they drove the truck past it to simulate the car moving, and then smashed the fist through the windshield. It's freaking genius, actually.
Movie magic.
Movie magic. Oh my God, it's so good. That one scene, man. Whew, so cool. So cool. Yeah. I'll just keep us here for another 3 hours with these trivia facts, man. This is fun stuff. Fun stuff. And all right, so in your opinion, and we haven't began to touch the surface of sci-fi epics on this show. We've got a few, but not nearly a third of anything. Honestly, there's so much we could talk about on the show. But in terms of science fiction epics and movies that stand the test of time and franchises and everything, would you hold the Terminator story and franchise up there with, say, I don't know about James Bond, but would you hold it up there with Star Wars? Would you hold it up there with, I don't know about MCU because it's so huge. Where do you hold this story, this franchise, these characters? Where do you think it ranks through the years?
I definitely think it ranks up there at the time with like other franchises like Alien. Um, I don't know if I would rank it as high as something like you said, MCU or Star Wars, but I do think that it holds up as one of those franchises that has staying power. As much as we're sitting here saying that they shouldn't have made another Terminator 2, there's still interest in Terminator franchise. There's still interest in Terminator projects every time they put out something. And I think that says something about the impact those first two movies had. Um, and I feel like Jurassic Park is another franchise that's very similar. Like, do we really need as many Jurassic Park movies after that? Probably not, but that just goes to show just how big of an impact Jurassic Park had on people when it first came out.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, people just can't get enough of it, man, because they just think back about the originals and hey, let's keep the story going. Yeah, yeah. Well, kids, there you have it. There is what I have been known to call T1, although at the time we didn't call it that because we didn't know it was going to be a T2, but now I call it T1, otherwise known as the Terminator. Um, yeah, it's a classic, folks. If you haven't seen it, my God, what's wrong with you? You haven't seen it in a long time. For goodness sake, go find it. And this is something we rarely do here, Phil, is talk about where you can find it. If you're going to watch it, you're going to have to rent it on a streaming service. You're going to have to watch it on DVD. I found it on one of these movie streaming services and watched it because we did the True Lies episode and forgot to tell everybody listening that thing was notoriously hard to find.
Hmm.
So, yeah, but I got it. We made it happen. So, Phil, let's take this home, my friend. Give me your last word on the Terminator.
I think depending on when you were born, um, you probably were hit harder by Terminator 2, most people. But I feel like the first Terminator is innovative for its own reasons. It's definitely a drastically different movie. But I feel like that's why it works so well. Um, Terminator 2 is still probably the best sequel, one of the best sequels ever. But I don't feel like it has the foundation to be what it was if the original Terminator wasn't so iconic.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I've heard part two called better than part one as well. And certainly perhaps the best sci-fi sequel and certainly, one of the best sequels of all time. I agree with all that sentiment, but you're right. If number one didn't have an impact, number two wouldn't mean anything. Yeah, well said for sure. Well, as we said, kids, you don't have anything to fear. We don't have any intention to talk about any other Terminator films because, quite frankly, they didn't happen. Don't worry about it. You got what you needed from the first two. So after you listen to this one, go out of your way to go find the second one if it has indeed been released. Check the archives, kids. You may find it. And if you don't see it, you'll see it at some point. I promise you, it's in the can. It's been done because we think about you, the audience. We try to get ready for stuff and be ready, be prepared. Be prepared. That's what I say. Hope you enjoyed the show. And we'll see what happens with these characters moving forward, if anything. But in the meantime, that is the Terminator. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.